Hi, I'm Ahava Leibtag. Today I'm joined by two new friends from Boston Children's Hospital, Haley Palazini, Director, Digital Marketing Strategy, and Becca Jeanjean, Manager, Online Reputation and Enterprise Listings, to talk about their award-winning chatbot, innovation, iteration, and more. You've got questions, we've got answers. Ladies, thank you so much for being here. It's wonderful to have you.
Thank you for having us.
Tell me what you're excited about in healthcare marketing coming up.
I think even just in the past couple of years with AI kind of starting to really dive both feet into healthcare has been really exciting for us, and seeing what's in the future as well that's coming up, and just seeing other healthcare hospitals and others in the industry really diving in as well into adopting a bunch of AI tools into their marketing strategies.
I'm really excited in 2026 to be able to hopefully finally get that end-to-end attribution that digital marketers have been after. In the healthcare space, it's really challenging to see if your marketing is having an impact on that bottom line. And I think that there are a lot of technologies and platforms that are emerging that are finally getting us closer to that end-to-end attribution, to be able to come to the table and say, hey, we brought you this amount of dollars in 26 and we're asking for more in 27.
I love that. That's a great answer. Becca, I want to pull on a little bit on a thread about what you're saying about AI. So is there anything in particular about it that you're like, this is so exciting to see this being applied to healthcare marketing communications?
Yeah, I know you mentioned the chatbot that we've built, and it's really come a long ways. I think specifically with that, knowing that there are so many different types of chatbots that can be adopted, not just GPT with what I think a lot of people think it's just that, but it goes beyond that. It's also the different types of users that also come into using any sort of chatbot that goes beyond just the consumer, the patient, the families.
Yeah, I love that. I feel like when ChatGPT was introduced, people decided, oh, this is AI. And yet we've been using AI for years, like Amazon. Like, people who bought this also bought this. There's nobody tagging that behind the scenes at Amazon. That's machine learning at work. So it's just always funny to me how, like, somehow because that was considered AI, people took generative, and large language models to be AI, but that's not the only kind of AI there is. And that's a really great point to make. So I appreciate that. So I fangirled over your presentation at HCIC on this chatbot. I want you to know that I fangirled on the product. The product's great. It's obvious that you put so much thought and time and iteration into it. But what I actually loved about the presentation was you actually opened the curtain and showed the thoughtfulness. You talked about the challenges. It wasn't just one of these presentations about we took A, we connected it to B, now it's C. We did that again, and now it's a chatbot that works for people. So I would love for you to talk about the journey about the chatbot, and then the most important thing that I would love for you to pull out, because everybody is trying to do this attribution and they're trying to get the money that they need for these technologies. And they're trying to convince their executives that this technology is safe, or it is going to get us what we need, or it's not going to destroy our brand. If you could talk a little bit about how you got through those hurdles.
I think that we're looking at the chatbot in our larger scope of all of the tools that we have. Becca can chat a lot more about the ins and outs and logistics, but we are a organization that does have a lot of opportunity for us to try things. We can talk about the different iterations of the chatbot, but it started very low cost as a proof of concept. And from there, that allowed us to continue to grow this and ask for additional funding to be able to grow this out. And I think that if you are really jumping in full AI and just focusing on those large language models types of chatbots, you're going to have a lot more pushback simply because you're a little bit less in control. And so showcasing the guardrails, the safeguards that we had in place that allowed us to be able to slowly roll out this chatbot, I think that's been really beneficial to us. And then as we start to look forward to the future, how can we then connect maybe a truly virtual agent to a live agent to a self-scheduling? So being able to start small with minimal funding and grow that up to ask for additional funding has been a beneficial process for us to be able to have success.
I want to ask you a question about that, though. When you were preparing for these meetings, were you thinking about every possible denial you could get? Like, how did you anticipate what proof of concept you were going to need to get them to say yes?
I can speak for our organization. I imagine it's very similar across the board. Anticipating the legal challenges when it comes to discussing PHI and different things in healthcare and all of the changes to HIPAA that have happened in the last 5 years. Those are the things that we come ready to the table to answer those questions. The other things have really fallen into place once those questions have been answered.
That's really helpful. So did you make really good friends with compliance, or were you just like somebody, did you actually put into ChatGPT what potential problems would compliance?
No, we did not become very good friends with compliance, but maybe that also helped us along the way in anticipating the type of questions that we've been asked with other various projects that we've done in the digital space. For us, legal and compliance does have a little bit of a blind spot when it comes to the digital world. And because of that, they play things very, very safe. So we need to very slowly introduce things to them and explain all of the safeguards that we have in place to ensure HIPAA compliance and that there is no PHI in this and that we are not accidentally giving someone incorrect medical advice and showing them that peek behind the curtain. And they scrutinize us, they really do, which I think ultimately makes the product safer, and it ended up in a really good place.
I always say to people, don't be afraid of compliance. Use them as your friends because you don't want to be the person to push the wrong button. It's also helpful to get them to tap into their more creative juices as well. Becca, Haley really talked about the proof of concept so well. I would love to hear from you the iteration journey part of the chatbot. You started with proof of concept, you proved that there was something there. How did you figure out how to iterate, what to iterate, who to go to get what you needed, particularly on the content side of things, I think really of interest to our audience?
I think something that I mentioned in our presentation was you need to ask yourself the questions first before you really start to dive into it. What do you want the chatbot to do? What questions do you want it to answer? Do you want it for internal use, external use, a little bit of both, operational? Just going down that list. And once you figure out what you want to use your chatbot for us, we knew we wanted it to be patient facing. We knew we wanted it to help out our call centers, try to reduce the calls that could be easily answered online of what's the fax number? What's the address? Where in the hospital is this clinic located? So that is really where I started to really think about, I really want it to go in this direction, but how can I do that? So knowing that with the website has all that information. So then I started going down the route of, okay, so let's turn this into like a site search, a quicker site search for someone to use once they get to the website. And that's how it developed to what it is today. And it continues to develop. I'm always in there editing, updating, revising different questions and answers just by going to all the different pages on the website. And it also helps some of our departments take a look at the content as well. If it's outdated, then the content on the chatbot's also going to be outdated.
No, that makes a lot of sense. So did you actually use real users at any point in your testing?
Yeah, the first iteration was during COVID that we had started building back in 2018 and dragging our feet with when is this ready to really launch to be patient facing? And I think with COVID and all the COVID related questions really helped us make that decision to, okay, it's time. So once we launched that, we started using patient families to use it, give us feedback, what they liked, what they didn't like, the tone of voice, the conversation aspect of it, and it went from there.
So I used to run a series called What Did You Learn? And I would interview people during COVID, people like yourself, and ask them, what have you learned during this time period? And what a lot of people told me is that when push comes to shove, they're going to say yes, because during this time period, we had no choice. We had to lean on these types of communications. We had to learn to work better together. Now, what I found really interesting was I stopped the series after COVID was over, but in talking and revisiting some of these conversations, I've asked people, do you still think that spirit of we've got to get it done is still there? It sounds like we started in 2018, 2020 pushed us, we had to do it. Do you still feel like you're feeling that momentum, or has that feeling of, all right, let's get it done, fallen away?
I mean, yes and no. I think as AI is developing and it's becoming more and more important in healthcare, that you're learning as much as you can to know what is coming in the future, making sure that you're building and adapting as much as you can to that.
So it's not a pandemic forcing it, it's AI.
Yeah, it's just AI in general. But I think the pandemic definitely forced us to get into that mindset.
You talked about iteration so well. I've talked to a lot of people at academic medical centers, and what they say is that the minute somebody says, let's do a pilot project, you know that thing is going to die after the pilot is over. So how did you have the strength to keep pushing the rock up the mountain?
I thought that when it started the project, I slowly started seeing the increase in uses in the chatbot. And I think that seeing that people were actually using the chatbot really made me motivated to want to continue it, to add even more information, not just clinical, but what is there to do around Boston? What hours is the cafeteria open? How do I order room service to my child's room? Understanding what people are looking for. So I started looking at even more pages on the website. Even if someone's visited the page once in 2 months, someone is on that page, someone is looking for that information.
So it's almost like real-time user feedback. And
Yeah.
that's so powerful to executives. Somebody was just telling me yesterday that in the first days of Facebook, she would copy and paste all the comments on the hospital's Facebook page and show them to the executives. And she said it became this like train wreck, and she wanted to stop doing it and they wouldn't let her. They almost used it for like entertainment value. But she said it was so useful to her because she was able to show them, we have to get control of this property. We cannot let this spin out of control. That's the same thing with the chatbot. You're showing them, hey, this information is so useful to people. We've got to keep this going. Haley, what did you do to garner the strength to keep doing this?
Yeah, we are a blessing and a curse. We are a very lean digital team at Boston Children's, but that also means we all are a little bit of a jack of all trades. You'll notice that Becca's title really has nothing to do with chatbots, but we are encouraged to explore all of these different avenues. And so I especially think with the chatbot, like we started in this very small space, as new technologies have emerged, we're now exploring how can we connect this to Epic? How can we introduce self-scheduling into our chatbot? What does a live person escalation look like? So those pieces are the things that kind of help me want to continue doing this. It's definitely on the day-to-day can be a task, but if you're looking at that bigger picture into what we're actually doing to that patient journey, that's the difference that I'm trying to push for and that keeps me going.
I think that's what I loved about the presentation. It was, this is the way to do this. It's really a long process. You're not going to get there overnight, but like just keep plugging away at it. I don't know if I'm sorry to say this or if this is actually a feature of healthcare marketing and not a bug, but just everything takes so long. And in other industries that are regulated, it does also because of what we talked about, like compliance is on you. And they're on you for the right reasons. They're trying to protect the organization and they're trying to protect the people who these laws are written for, but it definitely makes for having to have creative design solutions. So how are you seeing patient experience changing from chatbots and other similar technologies? Can you describe potential dangers or bright spots you see on the horizon?
I think that we are in a new generation of parents. You're not talking to the same people that necessarily want to pick up a phone and wait on hold, wait for a call back. And so I think that all of these different technologies that we're implementing are to serve the millennial and Gen Z parents that are used to that instant gratification, that Amazon 2-day shipping, being able to do all of that yourselves without having to cut through a lot of that red tape. I think that's the difference that we're seeing. With that also comes challenges of ensuring that someone is scheduling with the correct provider for that diagnosis and making sure that all of the logic in the background is set up to catch all of those things that could potentially lead someone to show up for the wrong clinic or to schedule with the wrong provider. So there's definitely two arms of the coin. As a millennial parent, I want to be able to do that myself after my kids are asleep, which is when the office is closed. However, I'm not a doctor. I have a diagnosis, but that doesn't mean that I'm scheduling with the correct provider that child should see.
The right patient at the right time in the right location is the holy grail we're all chasing. And the executives are putting more and more pressure on us to use AI to solve that problem. But then it's like, well, then you have to give us money to make the databases right. And you have to give us money to connect these technologies to each other. And you have to give us money to make sure that the content is correct and the data layers are all doing what they're supposed to be doing. I think a lot of executives are usually older and they are part of Gen X, and there might even be some baby boomers still in the mix. And they're like, why would you want to schedule an appointment on a chatbot? Let me show you why.
Come sit in my living room at 3 p.m. and I will tell you why I'm not calling someone on the phone.
I see this with my own kids. My kids are Gen Zers and they don't ever want to talk to anybody on the phone. And I'm like, just pick up the phone. This is what this thing is. It's a phone. And they're like, no. don't talk to people. It's so important for executives to see that behavior and to see like they're not going to call. Your call centers are important, but more and more they're going to turn into chatbot centers, AI centers, and they're not necessarily going to be about actually communicating over the phone. And I loved what you said before about connecting the chatbot to an AI, to an agentic AI, some sort of scheduler situation, which then maybe you do need a medical professional to come in and triage the situation. Becca, I would love to hear from you what you're excited about, what this technology might actually morph into, and then potential dangers or bright spots that you see coming up.
To echo Haley, it's watching it merge into being able to talk to an epic, being able to escalate to a live person. So it's intertwining with all these different departments at the hospital that it never really connected to before, and just seeing the evolution of it growing, seeing where it started and to where it's going to be going. I know in our presentation we did talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly, which I think is very important to talk about, because when you're, especially in pediatrics and children, when you're asking a chatbot, what dosage should I give my 2-year-old? It's okay, I can give you the dosage with what the bottle says, but how tall is your child? Does your child have a medical history that I should be aware of? It's all so different. So I think that's a danger that people do need to be careful of when they're starting to dive into AI and having it be consumer facing. The easiest way is to give a response of call your prescribing doctor, call your pharmacy to get the dosage that you're looking for.
Do you put in empathetic language like, I know you want this answer, but you need to call your doctor because we want to keep you safe? Or do you just say, call your prescribing doctor?
I try to give the chatbot some sort of a personality, not come across as a cold bot, but to let people know that I hear you, but unfortunately, I can't give you the information that you're looking for, because for many reasons, legal reasons, HIPAA, that's something at the top of the mind going into it as I programmed everything that I wanted to be very careful of.
You don't want your chatbot to be like strict British nanny, but you also don't want it to be Mrs. Doubtfire.
Exactly. Exactly. Although Mrs. Doubtfire would be pretty fun. If you're thinking about AI and thinking about wanting to bring it into your strategy, don't be scared, just do it.
There's a very clear divide of people that are all in and people that are all out, and trying to find that middle ground of starting small, start internal. Start your first thing that you do doesn't need to be a large main website external chatbot. You can see how you could potentially utilize any custom GPT, large language model, any of the AI workflow softwares. How can you make yourself more efficient to become more comfortable with it before you start exposing your external audience to that? Give it a whirl. The worst thing you can do is turn it off.
Thank you so much for joining me, friend. I hope you got the answer you needed today. If you have a burning question, leave it in the comments or email me at ahava.leibtag@ahamediagroup.com. See you next time.